I'm not going to keep you very long this evening, but this subject that I selected this evening kind of goes back to a lesson that I gave not too awful long ago, a segment of that, and kind of maybe expounds upon it a little bit. When I gave a lesson here recently about trials in our life and finding joy in those trials, one of the examples I gave was like we come along sometimes and we take our trials with us in a little suitcase or whatever, and we try to set those things down at the foot of God, and then we just go ahead and pick them back up. I was discussing that with several of you know Billy Underhill, and he said, well, that's the gunny sack. I said, gunny sack, what do you mean? He goes on to explain, well, we take that gunny sack and we fill it full of all of our problems, and we set them at the foot of God, and then yet after we get through talking with God, we grab the gunny sack back up and make sure everything's still back in there, and we take off with it again, instead of leaving it with God. And this is something that all of us deal with in life. We have problems. We have burdens. We have things that we deal with in our mind or even physically. And these are all things that we put in this gunny sack. And for the purpose of explaining this, let's just say that the problems that we have are rocks that we fill the gunny sack full of. Some of these things are small little pebbles that we put in the gunny sack, and some of them are just really huge boulders. Big problems that we deal with in our life. But we all have one. Every one of us has one of these things because of the things that we struggle with in life. And none of us have asked for that. And some of the problems and some of the weight of the gunny sack is because of decisions we have made in our own lives. And some of those decisions are big problems that we deal with, and some of them are very small that we deal with. But sometimes there are things that are out of and beyond our control that are in this gunny sack, if you want to say. Things that we have no control over, that we just deal with in life. There are all kinds of stones that we fill this gunny sack with, and one of those stones may be simply regret. Regret for times that you lost your temper, you said and did things that you couldn't take back. How many times have we said something and wished we could just grab those words right back? I mean, almost the moment that we let them out of our mouth. But we wish we could get them back because we see how much damage was done just instantly. Regret for days of lost time not spent with our loved ones, with our family, with our children, or with our parents, or whatever it may be. But we've made selfish decisions instead to do things that we wanted to do instead of spending time doing things for others. Regret for years that you lost your priorities. Regret for years spent on addicting yourself to whatever it may be, whether it be working or whether it be other things that distract us from life, or may possibly even drugs or alcohol. Regret for years serving ourselves instead of serving God. Wasted years, and so on. All of us have regrets. If we all had to live our life over, we would probably know that that's not something that I want to put in that gunny sack, and we would avoid it. But we've made some of these decisions, and our gunny sack is full of these things, and he maybe even regret. Whatever it is, one guilty stone after another, we placed it in this gunny sack, and we have to carry this burden around for a long time, maybe even the most of our life. The sack gets heavy, we get so tired, feel hopeless and desperate. And how can we even think about the future when we're just dealing with the problems that we're facing every day when we get up out of bed? The very first thing that pops into our head sometime are the problems that we're going to face today, that we faced yesterday, and we faced the day before, and we faced the day before. No wonder some people walk around with such a look of despair and look so miserable, and they have such a frown on their face, and there seems to be almost no spirit in their life because they're dealing with problems day after day after day after day. And this may be one of the reasons why so many turn to all kind of different types of addictions as a trial to distract them from the problems of life. And that can be alcohol, that can be drugs, that can be work, that can be just anything at all that would distract us from dealing with the problems that we have, whatever it may be. Sometimes people think that even, just if they avoid these things, that they will just go away. And something may take that burden away. But when we look back down, again, there's the gunny sack, still there, right at our feet. And we take it with us wherever we go. Some will take this sack to work with them. They'll become consumed in their work. We've seen this. They'll arrive early to work because that gets them away maybe from their problems. They're thinking about their work, and they become a workaholic to be able to take their mind off of things that they're dealing with every day. But at the end of the day, they pick the gunny sack up and go right back to work, back home, and take the gunny sack with them. Or some people may carry the gunny sack home with them. They get the sack, they set it on the floor, they get themselves comfortable, they pop open the can out of the refrigerator, and they take a few drinks of alcohol or whatever it may be, and that kind of calms their nerves, and they may get their mind off of their problems for a little while. But then when the effects of that wear off, there's the gunny sack still waiting for them, sitting right at their feet. Or you may drag your sack along with you to other people and friends. And you take the gunny sack and you take each one of the rocks out and you set it out and you talk about it. And you take the next one out and you talk about that. And you talk about this one and you talk about that one. But at the end of the conversation, that person sits there and listens all intently, and you're describing all of these things one by one, and they empathize with you, and that's all helpful sometimes, but when you leave, you take all those rocks and you put them back in the gunny sack and you walk away with all the problems still. And sometimes we may think that we're expecting a different result. Another thing we do with our gunny sack is we take some of the stones out and we throw them at those that we love. We become so frustrated with the burdens that we carry that we take our frustration out on other people. We're upset, we're discouraged, whatever it may be, and we may throw the stones at others that we love. The reason we continue to have such problems and a burden about this is doubt. I think we doubt that we may never be able to solve any or get through to the other side of the problems we carry with us every day. We doubt God's ability to take the burdens away. We go to Him in prayer and ask Him to take the pain away, the suffering, the depression, the load, the sorrow. We lay the gunny sack at His feet and say, God, here are all my problems. Please take all these away so I can get through this. Then we turn right around and pick up the gunny sack again instead of leaving it at God's feet. We act as if we don't think God has the ability or the power to remove these problems from our lives. We lack faith that God can actually help us. And that's hard for us to do sometimes, is just to let it go. Probably one of the harder things that we'll do in life is to let things go. When we have no control, especially over those things. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to have problems that we can solve. We can make choices in our life to solve some of the problems that we deal with. If we have financial problems, we can make the decision that we're not going to buy this, or we're not going to buy that, and we're not going to spend money on things unnecessarily, and we can work our way out of those things. But sometimes there are problems that we cannot solve on our own. But James says, "But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord." James 1 and verses 6 through 7. You see, God says for us to give it to him, and yet when we ask God to forgive it to him, we want to take it back. It doesn't make any sense for us to think that way. And so the result is a person that just trudges through life, day after day after day, weighed down by all these problems, bad choices, mistakes, and sins of the past. So how do we solve the problem? How do we get to the other side? How do we get any relief from the burdens? Jesus says in Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Well, you may think, well, I've tried that. I attend church, I pray, I read my Bible, but I haven't received any relief. And if that's the way you feel, in other words, you just have shown up to church and you've shown up to worship and you've just read your Bible and you've maybe not recognized or accepted the graciousness of God and his ability and his power to accomplish what you've asked for, we're failing. We must have faith that he has the ability. But Jesus' words are, "Come to me." It's easy to look for a solution to our burdens in the wrong places. Maybe we've tried to deal with our problems of the past, some kind of all these problems that we try to fix on our own. We've read books. We went to personal counseling. We've talked to friends, but none of that's worked for us. Jesus says, "Come to me so I can help you with the burden of your problems and sin." Jesus said he's the solution for your burdened soul. Peter said this about God, "Casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you." We know God cares for us, but we need to have faith that God cares for us, and we need to believe that he can take care of us. It's a wonderful thing that we have a Savior and a God that knows that we're dealing with all of these things, and he can help us with the burdens if we'll just come to him. The writer in Hebrews encourages us with these words, Hebrews 4 and verses 15 through 16. "For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." Now, he's primarily talking about our sin here. But he talks about our weakness, our frailty, our maladies, either, and Thayer says, either in body or in mind. And we have a problem realizing that we cannot solve our problems all on our own. That's what we tend to do. And especially when we've done that all of our life, we've fixed our own problems. We've never relied on others to fix the problems for us. We've taken care of our own problems. We've just deal with them however we have to deal with them. And we've solved our own problems. Then we get to a point where we come to a hurdle and we come to a burden so big and we try to solve it on our own, and that's the direction that we think, and we don't think about turning it over to God. But this tells me, when he talks about this weakness and frailty and malady of either body or soul, it tells me that I'm not strong enough to bear this all alone. And he tells us that we can come to the throne of grace boldly. Thayer says that is freedom in speaking, unreservedness in speech, openly, frankly, without concealment, without ambiguity, free and fearless confidence, cheerful courage, boldness, assurance. We can boldly go to God and ask for just what we need, because he says here that we may find mercy and grace to help in time of need. We need God. We need Jesus. We need help from time to time, and we will not be able to solve all of our problems on our own. And we have to have faith that God is there and is willing and has the power and the ability to help us in solving these problems. You know why? Because we need that. We need it. I can't do it all. Neither can you. So we need to go to him. There's nothing to be afraid of. He's just waiting for you to take your gunny sack and pour it out at his feet and leave it there. Turn all your problems over to him. Empty the sack. Don't leave anything in it. Turn it all over to him and let God help us with our burdens.
We thank you for listening to our podcast put on by the Church of Christ at 2215 Plans Road in Bakersfield. If you would like any additional information, or you would like to receive a free Bible correspondence course by mail, please email us at info@churchofchristbakersfield.com. Our service times are Sundays at 10:30 a.m. and 5 p.m., and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Please make plans to join us. We would love for you to be our honored guest.